My name is Andrew Dent. I'm one of the core group on the Enfield Climate Action Forum, and together with a few of our colleagues on the EnCaf, we have set up a working group to take a look at district heating in the borough. And we're going to start off what is actually quite a complicated subject in some ways with a short presentation where I'm going to talk through what district heating is and what's happening in Enfield for a project that we think may last a little while because it is actually quite complicated. So here we go, just 10 minutes on what the group is doing and what's happening in Enfield. So what I'm going to talk about first of all is just to explain what district heating is and how that may be a bit different from what most people have in their own homes. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about why district heating often plays a part in the way central and local government, including Enfield, look to come up with strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from residential and business heating and power. And then say a little bit about what's happening in Enfield, because what's happening in Enfield is quite a big thing. And we think there's a few questions that we don't really understand, and we'd like to do a bit more work to make sure that we understand how district heating in Enfield is likely to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and help the borough get to net zero. So I'm just going to start off by making the point that I know many of you will be familiar with, which is that heating and hot water in buildings makes up 40% of the energy consumption and a fifth of the greenhouse gas emissions that we generate in Great Britain. These are kind of pretty well established figures from the Committee on Climate Change, and I've pinched one of their infographics here. Fundamentally, that means, and it's quite obvious really, that you can only get to net zero by 2050, and indeed the intervening targets by 2030, if we collectively are finding ways to shift to a decarbonised approach to heating homes and buildings. And so we start somewhere in the region of 85 million tonnes of CO2 at the moment, certainly as recently as 2015, and we need to be getting to a much, much lower figure. So what is district heating? Well, the first thing to say is that if you live in a house or a flat, most times you will have a boiler or some kind of heating appliance where the energy, whether it's electricity or gas or sometimes oil in more rural parts of the country, it comes to your home, and the combustion of that fuel takes place in the boiler in your home and provides heat and energy to your home. What has been around for a pretty long time is this idea that actually you don't need a boiler or an appliance in every single home. So often you'll find in blocks of flats or in schemes for older people, housing schemes for older people, things called communal heating, where there is one boiler to power all of the flats in the building. So that would typically be in a sheltered housing scheme, for example, one boiler for maybe 20 or 30 or 40 flats. And that works because they're all clustered close together, and it's possible to have a more efficient boiler for all of the homes than having 40 separate boilers, and they're all close enough so that you can put in piping to make sure that heating works efficiently. So that's on the left-hand side of this infographic, that's communal heating. What we're talking about with district heating is the same idea, but applied generally over a much larger area where, as the infographic suggests, it can be over a neighbourhood or over a town or over a city. There is one single energy centre, and there is then a way of transmitting the heat through some kind of pipe network, usually in the form of steam or hot water, around all of the houses. So you're getting from lots of pipes with lots of gas going to an individual boiler in each house to having one massive boiler for a whole town and the pipework transmitting the heat around them. And that is this idea of heat density. So if all of the homes are close enough, all of the buildings are close enough together, it makes more sense in that heat density scenario to actually have one large energy centre. And why would that be low carbon? Because, of course, just because you've done that doesn't mean you're not still burning gas. Well, one of the things that you can do is find different ways of providing energy or fuel for that kind of district heating. And there are examples in other parts of Europe where that district heating network, and indeed in England where that district heating network concept applies. So just that infographic on the left is kind of showing this idea that it is possible, but that you do have to have enough heat demand in a small enough area for it to work. But if you do have that heat demand, and if you look at the graphic on the right-hand side, that will show you where those heat demands can come from. You can then make choices about what sort of heat you use to generate or to supply that heat network. Now, ideally, if it's a low carbon heating strategy, you're taking it from renewable sources, and those environmental heat sources are indicated on that graphic there. They can come from river water, and there are examples of that. They come from geothermal heat, which is common in places like Iceland, but there are also some experimental projects in England for that. It can come from heat generated by other activities. So data centers is another common one where all the heat from lots of servers is used to heat water and is then pumped into those networks. And it can come from industrial processes as well. Now, of course, part of the challenge here is those heat sources in that diagram, not all of them are low or zero carbon. In this context, a lot of the questions for us about what is happening in Enfield are the fact that as we understand it, the source for the district heating strategy in Enfield is to take this idea of waste to energy. So let's just take a look at that for a minute or two. So for those who are not familiar with this, and there will be many of you, I suspect, you may well have seen some signs around roadworks or possibly vans, possibly even some signs with this logo, Energetik. What is Energetik? Energetik is a company that's wholly owned by Enfield Council. It was set up some while ago, and it's set up to provide a district heating network. And you can see, Energetik's got a website, so you can see all about that. And what it's doing is it's managing and developing district heating across the borough. At the moment, it's doing this in a particular way. There are existing district networks that serve principally council housing in two places in Arnos Grove and Ponders End, and those are powered by gas. And okay, they're existing heat networks. They may be relatively efficient compared with individual boilers, so it's taken those on. But it's also building a new network. I had actually meant to include some photos, but I forgot to do that. And it shows some of the impact of building this new network of underground pipes, particularly if you live in the area of Edmonton Green or going up the road from Meridian Water area up to the north of the borough from Edmonton Eco Park. You will see lots of roadworks. And if you look in the roadworks, in the trenches they're digging, what you'll see are that they're installing lots of heavily insulated pipes. And what they're doing is putting in place a pipe network that allows hot water to be piped, in this instance, from Edmonton Eco Park, which is the incinerator that's being built, all the way up to Meridian Water. So the energy that is going to be in this district heating network that Energetik are building is going to come from is intended to come from the incineration of waste. Okay, so which homes and businesses are connecting to this network? Well, firstly, part of this is about providing zero carbon heating, or the stated aspiration to provide zero carbon heating to the 10,000 homes that were planned at Meridian Water, but have a wider goal to connect to up to 30,000 homes and businesses along that network of pipes that Energetik are building. And they are mainly, as we understand it, going to be new homes. It's not designed principally to connect existing homes. It's principally for new homes. And so that's intended to take a significant part of time. It is part of a supported activity that is part of a national strategy for supporting the development of district heat networks. So what do we think about all this? Well, I think it's fair to say that at the moment, we are trying to make sure we understand exactly what it is that is being delivered in Enfield and whether or not it is actually going to provide the best zero carbon heating solution, not just for new homes potentially, but also for other existing homes across the borough. So here are some of the things that we are spending a bit of time making sure that we understand from lots of documents around that are available around this topic. So obviously one of the questions that we want to make sure we understand is what kind of assumptions Energetik and the borough are making about how energy from incinerating waste is actually reducing emissions and air pollution. I think in particular we are concerned about whether or not lots of assumptions are being made that the waste would be burned anyway, and therefore by using the heat from it, it's not actually creating any additional emissions. If those kind of ideas are being used to justify a district heating network based on burning waste, then actually the question is not so much whether that is an energy efficient way of doing things, but whether or not that is actually going to get us to reducing greenhouse gas emissions to zero, because clearly the burning waste has got the potential or the significant risk of continuing to put emissions, both of greenhouse gases and pollutants, into the air. The other question for us is that the focus is on connecting new homes and businesses under Enfield planning policy. So we're worried that what is actually happening is that Enfield's planning policy is making new developers of new homes and businesses connect to the pipe network, even where we think there is potentially better ways of, or better low or zero carbon heating solutions for those businesses. So is it the case that actually Energetik is getting that business from new developers even when there are better heating options for the environment? I think some of the other questions are actually about what this means for residents who are connecting to the district heat network. So clearly one of the things that matters here is that if you buy a flat, for example, and you're connected to this heat network, actually you won't have the option of any other heating supply. Certainly that's the intention, and so you are therefore committed to using this network, and however good or bad Energetik are, that is your only option. There is currently a government consultation on whether the regulatory arrangements for these networks are actually sufficiently robust in residents' and customers' favour. But actually that is a real issue, is that if you're in the district heat network, it does look like you may not be able to choose other options. And again, that may mean you can't switch to better low and zero carbon heat options, even if you wanted to. And I think therefore one of the key issues for us is whether this approach in a broader sense across the borough is actually, and the massive amount of investment that is going into building this pipe network is actually going to discourage or distort the way in which the borough approaches getting to zero and low carbon, not just for the homes connecting to that network, but for all of the other thousands of homes in the borough, and whether or not we're actually paying attention to the real big picture issue here, which is that we need to get to zero and low carbon, as the CCC picture indicated at the beginning of this slide presentation, for all of us. So that's what we're doing in the District Heat Network Working Group. We're going to be looking at whether or not we've got the right understanding and figuring out what we think the answers to these questions are. We're going to be promoting more awareness of what's going on, because we don't think it's necessarily very clear to lots of people exactly what the strategy is. And we're also not saying that we think district heat networks are a bad thing. I think we just want to make sure that if we are going to have this arrangement in Enfield, that as a community group and a community network, that we are holding the borough and Energetik to account and making sure that they show us that this is the best way of getting to zero and low carbon heat, and that we're not throwing away better ideas because of this investment and commitment to this particular heat network. So watch this space, there'll be more to follow, and if anybody's interested in finding out more about what we're doing or helping us to work out the answer to this question, please get in touch.